Have you ever listened to a really cool song and thought, man, I wish I could do that? But then you try to make music yourself and it sounds like this? Yeah, I've been there. Fortunately, I just had to make this little video to show you the basics on how to not only make good music, but do it all for free. So, without any further ado, let's just get right into it. So step 0 is to learn music theory, because it's pretty important, and if you don't, then you'll have no idea what you're doing. There's this 8.5 minute long video by however you pronounce this name, and I highly recommend watching it. It'll be in the description. Step 2 is to click the second link in the description and download my instrument pack. It's got a bunch of free instruments and sound fonts. Alright, well, technically, there are a couple of sound fonts here that are not supposed to be free, specifically the Definitive Perfect Drum Sound Font and Shred 0, but you can just delete those if you're not comfortable with piracy. And you might be wondering why we're doing that first. It's so that you can have a VST folder ready for when you click the third link in the description and download Cakewalk by BandLab. This DAW is something I learned about like just a couple days ago, and I'll be honest, I was pretty surprised at how good this free DAW is, because, you know, it's got just about everything a normal DAW has. I mean, it doesn't have as many like stock instruments or anything, but it's very, very usable, and it has like VST support. That's the main thing we're going to be using, by the way, VSTs. Sound fonts can be kind of low quality sometimes, and you have to put a bunch of effects on them to make them sound good, but sometimes they're fine. But like, you know, Toby Fox was able to make good use of them. So if you're having trouble downloading it, I highly recommend this series by ADK Studios. The very first episode goes into how to install Cakewalk, as well as some other stuff that I'm not going to cover here, because this is more like a general overview of both Cakewalk and the free instruments that are in my instrument pack than an in-depth Cakewalk tutorial. With that said, let's just open up Cakewalk. So first you're going to want to go to New Project here. And I mean, you can click on one of these presets, but for this tutorial we're going to click on Empty Project. Oh, also, if you accidentally close that thing, you can just click here and it'll pop it back up for you. So the first thing we're going to do is go to Edit and then Preferences, and then VST Settings. And we click Add, and just find where my instrument pack is, and just click that. And now Cakewalk will scan all those VSTs. Might take a minute. And now all your stuff will be here. Now my stuff is already organized in here because this is actually my second time recording this. But for you, it should actually look like this, with a lot of things in the uncategorized folder. If you want, you can just right click it and then type in a category, or you can click this little arrow here and choose one of the things here. So now we gotta add a track, and to do that, there's two ways to do that. First, you can just drag this in here and then click OK. So you can do that, or you can click this little button here and change this to instrument, and then there will be a drop down menu. You can look through all this if you want. Select that and click create, and that'll just add a nice little track for you. So first, let's right click this button. You'll see there's a bunch of things here. You can duplicate the track, you can delete it, you can replace it. Whenever it says synth, it really means instrument. I don't know why it says synth all the time, it's just instrument. You can click replace synth, and then this will pop up again. You can change it to whatever you want. We're going to change this to RF-Soundfont. That's going to be our main sound font player, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. But now let's try and get into the piano roll. You see this little space here? Just double click anywhere in here, and then it'll pop open the piano roll. You can just click on the notes to play them, and then you can double click in this free space here to draw notes. You can drag them around. You can move them. You can also duplicate them with Control D, and that'll duplicate that. Control Z is undo, and Control Y is redo. Or you can grab it while holding Control and then just drag it down, or to the left or right or whatever. Now you might notice that this sounds kind of bad, and that's because we're just on the default patch here, which is a really bad strength sound font. If we want to fix that, we can just click here or click load, doesn't matter. Then go down here and into our instrument pack again, and click sound fonts, and then just go and choose whatever sound font we want. we'll do the definitive Megalovania sound font for now. So this is the patch, and that's basically just our instrument. And then we can click on this here, change it to that. And there's a bunch of other ones like that or this. We'll come back to that later. For now, let's take a closer look at the piano roll. If you hold Alt and then scroll with the mouse wheel, you'll be able to zoom in, and then you'll be able to draw smaller notes. You can just set that there. And you can see up here, this is set to place 8th notes. And then you can just click this to set to 16th or 32 or whatever this is. There's also some little scrolls here that you can drag around, as well as this one here. And then there's magnifying glasses that you can zoom out, zoom in, plus bars here that you can zoom out, zoom in. And this button here will get rid of the piano roll for whenever you want to just have a good look at the tracks here without this giant thing in the way. And finally, I'm gonna create a little scenario here. Just give me a second. Alright, so let's say you have a little lead here, and you want to copy it all, but you don't want to just recreate it manually. Well, for that, you can click this little button here, the select tool. Select all this, Control D, and then you can select these two notes, bring them down to, just make sure to switch it back to Smart, because Select will only select notes and it won't actually be able to move them. There's a bunch of other tools up here too, but Smart and Select are probably the only ones you need. By the way, to erase with the Smart tool, you just right click the note. By the way, to select all the notes, you can also just hit Control A, and you can just go here and like drag this back a little bit if you want. Also, you see these little bars here? That's the velocity. For Soundfonts, it mostly just controls the volume. For actual VST plugins, it controls the how hard you would be hitting the instrument if it was an actual instrument. For example, let's take a quick look at MT-PowerDrumKit. So that's our snare. And if we double click this note, it'll bring up all of this. You can see the velocity is set to 127. That's the maximum. You can also lower it down to we'll do 60. Now listen to it. Not only is it quieter, but the actual sample is less hard, I guess. Alright, enough of that. You can drag up here and it will select everything under that. You can do that too. Also, if you right click, you can set a loop. Yeah, it just loops the selected region. But keep in mind that the loop is independent of the selection region. So if I move the selection region, the loop is still the same spot, though I can also just move the loop independently. Really quick, let's go into the console here. The console is just basically your mixer. You can pan it. You can make it quieter or louder. And there's some other jargon here too. You can solo it or mute it. Soloing it basically makes it so that it's the only instrument playing. Like if I copy this to this, if we solo this, then it's the only thing playing. But you can actually solo more than one thing, or more than one track. So if there were a third instrument here, then only these two would be playing. You can also just mute this. As for these record buttons, they don't really do anything unless you're using a live instrument, which, if I had to guess, you're probably not, since you're still pretty new to this. I would recommend investing in a live instrument at some point though. As someone who has never used one, they look pretty useful. By the way, these are two separate clips. I don't know why it does that, it just does. But if you want them to be the same clip, you can select them both and then right click and then bounce the clips. And now they're one the same. So the tempo, you can click here and type this in. We'll set it to 150 for an example, and that'll just change the tempo. Or 100 for example. We'll set it back to 120. You can also change the time signature here, but let's be honest, you probably don't really need anything other than 4/4. Oh yeah, by the way, you can also turn the loop on or off up here. and set the loop points to the section up there. Oh, also, if you click here, there's some stuff here. This is basically just like the console, except it's a little bit more easy to access and it's a bit more compressed, I guess. Alright, now effects. Let's just look at this effect here, the reverb thing. You can just drag that up here and it'll add it for you. And yeah, that's just pretty much your standard reverb. But I guess we can just start getting into the instruments themselves. Actually, before we do that, I just want to point out that there are a couple of instruments that I do highly recommend that you get, but aren't in my instrument pack. However, we're not going to go over them right now because, well, they're all right here. If you click on everything you're missing.txt, you'll see this thing. It's got links to all the instruments that I recommend that you get, like Spitfire Labs, Contact, Decent Sampler, plugins for free, all that good stuff. Go check those out, and yeah, let's get into RF-Soundfont. So first, since it's already open, let's look at RF-Soundfont. So the first thing is, I already went over this, there's the volume, pretty basic. The panning, just pans it to one side of the headphones or the other. This octave, and the semitone, and then the envelope. I'll just put a picture on screen and let post commentary me explain it. Yeah, thanks, man. Anyways, the attack is basically how long it takes for the sound to reach its peak, and then the decay is how long it takes for it to reach the sustain. And the sustain is just like the main level of audio that when the key is being held. And the release is how long it takes for it to go from the sustain to 0 after the key is released. There's the filter, the reverb. These are some more interesting stuff now. And then the delay is like an echo. The ping pong makes it like bounce around in each headphone thing. And then you can change the timing to like a 16th of a note. That sounds pretty cool. Let's go ahead and set this back up to 0. The chorus. Again, I'll let post commentary me explain this one. Yeah, so basically a chorus is when a couple of notes play on top of each other with almost the same pitch and timing, but not quite, which gives it a kind of wider feeling to it, I guess. And then the glide, that's basically portamento. Except it doesn't work because the notes are slightly apart. So if the notes overlap, then the glide will basically do this. And then the stereo, I guess, kind of pans it to both headphone ears. And then the vibrato basically kind of makes the pitch wobble a bit without vibrato, and then with vibrato on max. And then with that, like 50%. Yeah, I think we're about done here. Next instrument, Edirol Orchestral. So I'll be honest, I don't really fully know how this plugin works. I just got it because I knew DM Dokuro used it and I really like his music. I'm not sure what these 15 things are. You can probably mostly just pay attention to this one. I might be giving bad advice right now. So if you go into the files of the Edirol Orchestral thing, there's a little folder that says help, and I would recommend looking through these. If you click around here, you can change the instrument. Let's change it to a trombone, and then now let's play it. It's a bit high, so let's turn it down an octave or 2. Let's also go over here and turn this up to the maximum volume. That's a bit better. Now let's click here, edit, and then we can add some portamento. We can mess with the envelope. We can do some EQ. If that sounds like jargon, then don't worry about it. This is just, you know, so you know where it is for later. So let's actually go ahead and drag this aside here and set this to full strings, this one. And then let's program in some notes here. There we go, just some basic power chords. Also, fun fact, this VST was made in like 2001, which is why this UI looks kind of dated. That being said, I should probably warn you that there might be a couple glitches that you encounter. First one is your notes might get like stuck like this. And if that ever happens, then just click the panic button and it will stop all currently playing notes. And then the other thing is make sure you don't get too attached to anything that you have going on in here, because Edirol tends to reset itself every time you save and reload your project. It won't get rid of any effects you have here. Like if there's like reverb here or something, then it'd be fine. Like this instrument will always be reset to a flute. Any effects on it will be reset, and the thing here will be reset whenever you save and load. So probably just use external effects on this thing. Alright, next plugin, Magical 8-bit plug. Now you might notice that that's a little bit loud, so we're gonna go ahead and turn that down a bit, like -8. Still pretty loud. Though to be fair, it is doing chords right now. So this one's pretty simple. You got your envelope here, you got some auto bending pitch. You can change the time, how long it takes to bend. And then you can adjust the vibrato, which again is like the pitch wobble. You can also change like how long it takes before it starts to wobble, and how fast it wobbles, how much it wobbles. You can also change the duty cycle. There's that, the pulse and square wave, and then there's also the triangle wave. Which is a lot softer and kind of fatter. And then there's the noise, which is literally just white noise. If you're wondering what the heck am I gonna do with white noise, I'll tell ya. You're gonna be making drums. If we turn down our sustain all the way and then make a little bit of decay here. Sound familiar? In addition to the 4-bit pure random, there's also a 1-bit long cycle and a short cycle. So 8-bit really does force you to get creative. Next up is monster guitar. This one's a big one because it's probably gonna be your main guitar unless you're using a Soundfont, which you can totally do, but you know, this one's probably a bit more high quality. So this, you're probably not gonna use this preset. You're gonna want to go to number 2. Still got the juice, or you can use 12 strings shine, depending on whichever one you want. And then the other preset, 12 string shine, it definitely sounds a bit different, I'll say that. So you can use it for like an actual acoustic guitar, or you could go into the guitar here and put in TH3, which is the guitar amp that comes with Cakewalk, and it's actually surprisingly good. We go here, just put in one of the presets, but that's not the only one. If we turn this down an octave again, let's actually go back in here. You see this high pass filter? We're gonna turn that up so that it doesn't sound as bassy. There's a whole lot of presets in here, and you can make more if you want. Just kind of experiment with all these items here. So that's monster guitar. Next up is MT-PowerDrumKit. MT-PowerDrumKit is a popular free drum VST. You do have to go through this menu every time. You have to click skip here. It's got all these here. It's got a mixer. You can adjust the volume of each individual piece of the drum. We're gonna turn the kick up because it's usually a bit quiet. It's also got a bunch of preset like MIDIs here. And if you want it to shut up, you can just click this button here. And if you want to unshut it up, then you can click it again. And if you want to add it, you can just kind of click and drag it. So you can use these if you want, but I would rather make my own drums. So to be honest, there isn't really anything else here besides the mixer and grooves. So yeah, that's MT-PowerDrumKit. So what's next? NES VST. Alright, so this thing is like magical 8-bit plug in the sense that it's for like 8-bit chiptune stuff. Also, yes, I'm recording this in a separate take because my initial explanation sucks, so you're welcome. This thing doesn't have a ADSR envelope, nor does it have vibrato controls. So you might be wondering why you would use this for magical 8-bit plug. And that's because it's got duty cycle, it's got this pitch thingy here. This thing doesn't like bend the pitch like how magical 8-bit plug does, it just kinda, you know. And then it's also got that, but for like volume and the duty cycle. And basically what the duty cycle is like, there's also your triangle wave, your noise, and then this thing, the DPCM. It stands for different pulse code modulation, and it's basically just like a very limited sampler. Comes with these 4 samples in it. If you're wanting to make like more authentic chiptune stuff, I would recommend just sticking with these 4 samples unless you can somehow find something else that would also work good, because you can technically also load in your own samples. You don't really need to though. There are a lot better options for that. Other than that, you can choose like between a long cycle and a short cycle up here with your noise. That's where Meditone's voice came from, by the way, if you didn't know. Also, you can choose to have the tempo sync. That'll make it so that it's exactly a 30-second of a step. But if you turn it off, then you can make it like 30 milliseconds. Yeah, I think that's basically everything. Next is... Ooh, this is an interesting one. Pneuma. Okay, so Pneuma actually got an update as I was editing this. There's not too much different here, though there is like a whole new folder of presets here. Not really too much else here that will change what I'm about to say though, so yeah. So this is a subtractive polyphonic synthesizer, and if that sounds like jargon, then don't worry, you're not alone. And also, if all this looks intimidating, then don't worry, because you don't actually need to learn how to use it, at least not yet. You probably should learn it at some point, but you don't have to just yet because it's got plenty of cool presets here. So these things that say ARP before them, those are arpeggios. They're kind of like sequences of notes, kind of. It's hard to explain. I'll let post-commentary me explain that one. Arpeggio. Noun. The notes of a chord played in succession, either ascending or descending. BS. That's bass. DR is drums. FX is sound effects. Init, this is the initial patch. This just has no effects on it, it's just completely, it's just the bass preset pretty much. Key, I honestly don't know. LD, those are your leads. PD, those are pads. They're kind of like strings, except not really. And then PL, those are like plucks. You could probably use those as like some kind of weird guitar thing. And then ST, those are strings. Comparable pads. SEQ, like arpeggios, but a lot more advanced, I guess. I don't really know. I would recommend starting out with presets, but you should probably eventually learn how to actually make your own. So yeah, that's pretty much Pneuma. It's really good for being a free synth, I'll say. Fun fact, it's actually made by the same guy who made RF-Soundfont. And finally, we have the only effects VST that I included in here, TDR Nova. But first, let's open up MT-PowerDrumKit. Alright, so I've made a purposely simple beat here with MT-PowerDrumKit. Now let's put in TDR Nova. And first, take note of how this sounds now. especially the snare. It does have some resonant frequencies in there. Make sure that this here is on out and not off or SC or in. It just makes it easier to use. So we can really highlight these resonant frequencies here if we turn this thing that says Q up to like 3, and the Q basically is like this slope here. You can see that. That just moves it left and right, this moves it up and down, but you can also just drag it around like that. This is good if you're wanting to be more precise though. Hear that? It doesn't sound very good, does it? Which is why we're gonna turn it down a bit. So this is before. This is after. It's noticeably better, isn't it? But that's not all we can do here. So let's also open this up on Monster Guitar. So first of all, let's pretend that this high pass filter thing doesn't exist here. Let's just turn it off. So let's take this and we can right click that to set it to an arrow, and that'll make everything from here on go down. And then we can right click it again to make it so it's on this side. And then we can also do that to adjust the slope. Let's do 0.8. We can always adjust this later though. We don't actually need to use this little dot here though. We can also just use this thing. This is the high pass filter and this is the low pass filter. We can just get rid of all those low frequencies there. Let's turn this up to here and let's look for some resonant frequencies. And then we can also get rid of some higher frequencies if we want to, but not all of them, like how using the low pass filter would, by doing this. So here's the before, and here's the after. Quite noticeable. Alright, so that's all the VSTs that are included. However, there's also a whole bunch of sound fonts that I included. Like, maybe a little bit too many, honestly. So let's go ahead and look through some of those. Not going to go through all of them because that would take too much time. But we'll just look through some. Alright, so first up we got the Dusttail sound font. This is actually more like an unofficial compilation of different instruments that are used in Dusttail. So this is actually just FL keys. I don't really know about the rest of these things though, except I'm pretty sure this is FL Slayer. Yeah, it's definitely FL Slayer. But yeah, if you're looking to make Dusttail songs, that's an absolute must-have. So there's actually two Earthbound sound fonts. The old one, the new one. Let's take a look at the old one first. So this is the one that Toby Fox used for Undertale. That's the same sample that's used in Megalovania. However, in the new one, it's also renamed Pokey Guitar, and for some reason it's also tuned up like 2 octaves. This is the one that's used in stuff like Anaval and Agam. And there's also a bunch of other stuff here, like the intro guitar. That might sound familiar. I think that was also probably in Earthbound, the normal Earthbound one, but I'm not sure. And then there's a couple of Mega Man ones. So yeah, that one's used in a song that might play when you fight Sans, I think. This, though. Electric synth piano. Sound familiar? If it doesn't, let me sketch something out here real quick. Yeah, it's an enigmatic encounter piano. So the Definitive Megalovania sound font, this is just a compilation of different instruments. There's this one. And then Perfect Drum sound font. Again, technically piracy, but you know. If you're going to use any drum sound font, this is the one I would recommend using. It's honestly probably better than MT-PowerDrumKit, but then again, MT-PowerDrumKit has those, you know, those grooves and the mixer, and it's not piracy, and it's not a sound font. And there's also like a bunch of different samples here, like all of these sound slightly different. Pretty noticeable if you ask me. And now Ultimate Guitar Kit. This is the part where we turn this back on. This was used in Hopes and Dreams and the Smash Bros. Megalovania. I think now is the part where I teach you how to like actually make music. Alright then, I guess I'll do that. Okay, so I was originally going to record myself commentating over me making a cover of an enigmatic encounter, but I decided that it'd be best for both of us if I just made an original song and put in some post commentary to explain what I'm doing. So right now I'm just kind of making the chords. Well, alright, I kind of already started making them, but I forgot to start recording earlier, so oh well. First 10 minutes of this footage is gone, I guess. These chords are pretty basic. They're just your standard minor chords. They go up and then down and then up and then down, and it's an 8-bar loop. Now I'm on Monster Guitar just looking through presets on TH3 to see which preset would work the best for this song, and I ultimately decided on Metal Hero Double Amp. Now apparently I briefly considered making these chords, but I decided to just make it a normal lead. Now making original leads is kind of just something that you get better at over time, which I know, very helpful, but there is actually a little trick that I learned from Reason Studios themselves. It's to base your melody off your chords. Here's a screenshot of the melody, and here's a screenshot of the chords. If we overlay these on top of each other, you can see the similarities, and yet this is undeniably a fully fleshed out melody. I'll link the full video from Reason down in the description if you want more details, but other than that, practice makes perfect. Alright, so here I am just doing a little bit of mixing, just messing around with Monster Guitar. Oh, it crashed. At least I only lost like 15 minutes of progress. Now here I am just making a short little kind of transitional drum pattern to kind of bring you into the next part of the song. I briefly considered using a groove, but decided against it. Now here I am making an intro drum beat, trying to use all the different cymbals just for some variation. Now I'm making a little bass line with one of the synth pluck presets from Pneuma. Just adding some hi-hats because I forgot to earlier, and yeah, we're basically done with the intro now. Just experimenting some more with Monster Guitar, trying to see what works and what doesn't. That's a big thing that you should do, by the way. Experiment a lot with these instruments and see what works, what doesn't. Try and find your style, what makes your music yours, all that good stuff. Now I'm making the main drum loop, spacing out all the kicks and snares and hi-hats nice and evenly, but no rides yet. That can come later. Just making another lead and some more chords, not really anything I haven't gone over. More experimenting with Pneuma, just trying to figure out how to make this drop really work. Okay, so when do I actually do something that's worth talking about again? Here we go. So one tip I have for making bass lines is to, again, just steal from your chords. But this time maybe a little bit more so than you would for your melody, because, I mean, just look at these screenshots. Just trying to figure out what to use for my bass line, and I eventually decide on classic bass from Contact. I guess I'm doing mixing now. Again, just something you get better at with time. It's also one of the easier things to mess up when you're making songs along with mastering, so this is one thing that I would recommend that you practice a bit. Oh, that thing in the top left corner. It's one of the effects that I didn't get into that comes with Cakewalk. It's a compressor, which basically limits how loud that track can be. It's great for mastering and stuff. Now I'm making a more relaxed drum beat for the break section, spacing out the kicks and snares a lot wider. I guess I'm just trying to figure out what to do next at this point, and I eventually decided on putting in some sound effects. Now Cakewalk doesn't let you adjust the volume of individual audio clips, but you know what it does let you do? It lets you put effects on individual audio clips, so I was able to just put it on a compressor to the first effect here and make it a little bit quieter. Remember how I said I wasn't going to put in rides until later? Well, here's where I finally decided to put some rides into the second section here to up the intensity a bit. Blah blah blah, can't really make any teaching moments out of this part. I also decided to put a flute in the break section because it's a relatively soft instrument, and I ended up just putting in the main part as well. Also, these chords are called fifths. They're a bit like power chords, except they're not quite as powerful, I guess. And basically it's just the melody and then the melody again, but 5 semitones lower. This one simple trick will make your chords 10 million times better. Place one note above your root note. This will be good sometimes. Thumbs up emoji. Here's another trick I play with the chords here. For most of the track I have the chords be like a half note, but for this part I have the chords sustain a lot longer for that kind of suspenseful effect, I guess. I also do a kind of similar thing with the bass line here. I add some horns here to make this part a little bit more dramatic. Here I decide I want this final note to have a little bit more release on it, so what do? I make an entirely new track for it. Bravo. Oh boy, we're entering the home stretch now. Basically all that's left now is the boring mixing, mastering and stuff, and some various other final touches. So I guess we'll just let this part play out, and I'll show you the finished product when this is over. Alright, here we go. Now I'll say this isn't exactly the best song I've ever made, but I think it's a pretty good showcase of what you can do with like, what, 5 hours and a bit of effort and a free DAW with free instruments. Anyways, here's the song. Alright, that's about it. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe to both this channel and my main channel because this took way longer than I thought it would. Like, I was hoping it'd take like a few days tops, and now I'm sitting here like 2.5 weeks later thinking, man, if only I didn't stutter so much.